Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Think in English podcast. I'm Anna, and today we're diving into a topic that almost everyone struggles with: work-life balance. In a world that's always busy, it's hard to stay productive without burning out. Our goal today is to talk about how to find that balance, how to rest properly, and how to stay focused without losing your mind. And remember, this entire episode is in English, so while you listen, you'll also be training your ears and learning lots of new words and expressions about productivity, stress, and motivation. My guest today is Clara, a productivity coach and well-being consultant who helps people manage their time better and live with more purpose. Hi, Clara. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this topic because I think people today are under more pressure than ever before. Everyone wants to do more, achieve more, and be constantly available. And that's a recipe for exhaustion.
Absolutely. It feels like everyone is running all the time, checking emails late at night, multitasking, drinking coffee just to stay awake. I think most people don't even realize they're close to burnout until it's too late.
Exactly. Burnout doesn't happen overnight. It builds up slowly through small, unhealthy habits. It starts with working late once in a while, skipping lunch, not taking breaks, and before you know it, you're emotionally drained, tired, and unmotivated.
That's such a good point. I remember when I used to think being busy was a sign of success. Like, if you weren't stressed, you weren't working hard enough. But it's the opposite, right?
Totally. I used to think the same way. But productivity isn't about working longer. It's about working smarter. It's about setting boundaries, managing energy, and knowing when to stop. In my coaching, I often say, you can't pour from an empty cup.
That's a beautiful expression. You can't pour from an empty cup. It means you can't help others or do your best work if you're completely exhausted yourself.
Exactly. Self-care isn't selfish, it's essential. You can't be effective if you're running on empty.
Let's talk about that word, self-care. I think people often imagine it's about expensive spa days or vacations. But what does it really mean in daily life?
Yes, that's a common misunderstanding. Self-care simply means taking care of your physical, emotional, and mental health. It can be something as simple as going for a walk, saying no to extra work, eating well, or having a short digital detox in the evening.
I like that. Digital detox. It's such a useful phrase. It basically means taking a break from screens and social media, right?
Exactly. We spend so many hours scrolling through phones or replying to messages even when we're supposed to rest. Just turning off notifications for a few hours can reduce stress levels dramatically.
So true. I sometimes put my phone on airplane mode in the evenings, and it feels like my brain can finally breathe.
Yes, and you'd be surprised how much better people sleep when they stop checking their phones before bed. Blue light and constant stimulation keep your brain active when it should be resting.
That's something I need to work on myself. So, Clara, let's talk about balance. What does work-life balance really mean to you? Because I think people define it differently.
Great question. For me, work-life balance isn't about splitting your time 50-50 between work and personal life. It's about feeling aligned, making sure that your work supports your life, not the other way around. Some days you'll work more, some days less, and that's okay. Balance is dynamic, not static.
That's so refreshing to hear. I love the phrase, your work should support your life, not control it. It's something most people forget.
Yes, and the problem is that we often attach our identity to our job. We say, I am my work. But that's dangerous because if something goes wrong at work, your whole sense of self-worth collapses.
That's deep and true. I've met people who feel guilty when they rest, like they always need to be doing something productive.
That's what I call toxic productivity, the idea that rest equals laziness. But rest is actually part of productivity. Think of athletes. They train hard, but they also rest hard. The same logic applies to mental work.
I like that comparison. So let's talk about practical ways to rest properly, because some people say, I don't have time to relax.
Laughs. I hear that all the time. But here's the thing. If you don't make time for rest, your body will eventually force you to. You'll get sick or burned out. Rest doesn't mean wasting time. It's recovery. It's what allows your brain to stay creative and focused.
Yes, I think that's something we all need to remind ourselves of. And I love the word you used, recovery. It's not being lazy, it's charging your batteries.
Exactly. And small things can help. Taking short breaks, walking during lunch, or doing something completely unrelated to work, like painting or cooking. The key is variety.
That makes sense. I read somewhere that boredom can actually boost creativity because it gives your brain space to think.
Yes, that's totally true. Our best ideas often come when we're not working, in the shower, on a walk, or before falling asleep. When the brain relaxes, connections form more easily.
So true. Okay, let's pause here for a second because I think we've already shared a lot of useful vocabulary and expressions. Toxic productivity, digital detox, self-care, charging your batteries, taking breaks. These are all phrases our listeners can add to their vocabulary list.
Yes, and I'd also add setting boundaries and work-life alignment. Those two are key to staying healthy and balanced.
Perfect. Let's continue in a moment and talk about how to actually create balance, not just understand it. Because theory is easy, but practice is the hard part, right? What work-life balance really means and how important rest is. Now, let's get practical. Clara, you work with people who often feel overwhelmed. What's the first step to regaining control over their time and energy?
The very first step is awareness, realizing where your time actually goes. Many people say, I don't have time, but when we track their week, they discover hours lost on scrolling, unplanned meetings, or multitasking. I always say, if you don't plan your day, someone else will plan it for you.
That's such a powerful line. If you don't plan your day, someone else will. So true. I think people underestimate how much time they waste on small, meaningless things.
Exactly. That's why I encourage people to do a time audit. Basically, write down what you do for a few days. You'll quickly see patterns. For example, maybe you spend 40 minutes every morning deciding what to wear, or 2 hours watching random videos at night. Once you know the problem, you can fix it.
That sounds like a great exercise. I actually tried something similar. I tracked how often I checked my phone. It was shocking. Over 100 times a day.
That's a very common result. Phones are designed to steal our attention. That's why one of the simplest ways to improve balance is to set screen boundaries, like no phones in the bedroom or during meals.
I love that. Let's talk about boundaries in general. You mentioned them earlier. Why are they so important?
Because boundaries protect your energy. Without them, people and even work will take more than you can give. Setting boundaries doesn't mean being rude. It means being clear about what's okay and what's not. For example, not answering work emails after 7 p.m. or saying no to projects that don't align with your priorities.
I used to struggle with saying no. I thought I had to agree to everything to be helpful or successful.
Many people feel that way, but saying no to others often means saying yes to yourself, to your health, your family, your rest. It's an act of self-respect.
That's a great way to look at it. So, after setting boundaries, what's next?
Then comes prioritization. You need to know what really matters. I often use a simple question. Will this still matter a year from now? If the answer is no, maybe it doesn't deserve that much energy today.
That's a smart one. I might start asking myself that. Because I sometimes get stressed about things that are completely irrelevant a week later.
Exactly. It's easy to mistake urgency for importance, but they're not the same. Just because something feels urgent doesn't mean it's truly important.
So true. I think social media and modern work culture have made us addicted to urgency. Notifications, deadlines, messages.
Yes, that's why learning to slow down is actually a skill. Some of my clients even schedule slow hours, time when they do one thing at a time without rushing. It's almost like meditation in motion.
That's interesting. Do you think multitasking is one of the main reasons people feel burned out?
Absolutely. Multitasking is one of the biggest productivity myths. The human brain can't really focus on two complex tasks at once. It just switches quickly, which makes us tired and less efficient.
I'm guilty of that. I often write emails, listen to podcasts, and check messages at the same time.
We've all done that. But when you do one thing at a time, single tasking, you not only finish faster, but also enjoy it more.
That's a useful term. Single tasking. I love how it sounds.
Yes, and it's becoming popular among productivity experts. Focusing deeply for short periods, like 25 minutes, then taking a short break is much more effective. That's also the idea behind the Pomodoro technique.
Right, I've heard of that. You work for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, and repeat, right?
Exactly. It's a great way to manage focus and energy, and you can adapt it. Maybe 40 minutes of work, 10 minutes of rest. The key is rhythm, not strict rules. So time awareness, boundaries, and rhythm, those seem to be the foundation of balance. Yes, and I'd add self-reflection, regularly asking yourself, am I doing what really matters? That question keeps you aligned with your values.
That's deep, and I think we often skip reflection because we're too busy.
Exactly. People say, I don't have time to think, but that's like driving fast without knowing where you're going. Reflection saves time in the long run.
That's a great analogy, and I think listeners can learn a lot from that. Slowing down, focusing, reflecting.
Yes, balance doesn't mean doing less. It means doing better.
I love that. Doing better, not just doing more.
Exactly.
We've talked about time, priorities, and focus, but let's go a bit deeper. Work-life balance isn't just about schedules, right? It's also about how we feel inside, our emotions, our motivation, our energy.
Exactly. You can plan perfectly, have a great routine, but if you're emotionally exhausted, nothing works. Emotions are like fuel. They drive every decision we make. That's why I always tell my clients, energy management is more important than time management.
I love that. Energy management. That's a really powerful phrase because we can't control time, but we can control how we use our energy.
Yes, think of energy like a battery. Some things charge you, like spending time with loved ones, being creative, or going outside. And some things drain you, like negative people, constant stress, or poor sleep. The goal is to do more of what charges you.
That makes perfect sense. And I think people often ignore emotional energy because it's invisible. You can't see it, but you feel it.
Exactly. When people say, I'm tired, they often mean emotionally tired, not physically. They've been pretending to be fine for too long.
That's so true. I think burnout often starts there. Emotional exhaustion before physical exhaustion.
Yes, burnout is basically the result of giving too much for too long without recharging. It's when passion turns into pressure.
That's a great definition. When passion turns into pressure. I think a lot of high achievers, people who love their work, fall into that trap.
Absolutely, passion is wonderful, but it needs to be balanced with boundaries. Otherwise, what you love ends up consuming you.
So, how can we keep passion alive without crossing that line?
That's a great question. I'd say stay curious, stay playful, and keep perspective. Don't take yourself too seriously. Work is part of life, not your whole identity. Remember why you started. Reconnect with your purpose.
That's really inspiring. Sometimes just remembering the why behind what we do changes everything.
Yes, and small rituals help too. For example, having a shutdown routine at the end of the workday, like closing your laptop, making tea, writing down tomorrow's priorities, and saying to yourself, work is done for today. It helps your brain switch off.
I love that. It's like a signal to your body. Time to relax.
Exactly. Or even having a morning ritual that prepares you for the day. Maybe stretching, journaling, or listening to music. These tiny habits can completely change how you feel.
I actually started doing something similar. I light a candle before work and blow it out when I'm done. It's symbolic, but it helps me separate work time from personal time.
That's a beautiful idea. It's simple but powerful. A great example of mindful behavior.
I think that's another useful phrase for our listeners. Mindful behavior. Doing things with intention, not just automatically.
Yes. Mindfulness isn't only about medication. It's about being present in whatever you do. When you eat, eat. When you rest, rest. When you work, work.
I love that. When you rest, rest. It sounds so obvious, but most of us rest while scrolling or worrying about the next task.
Exactly. And that's not real rest. That's passive distraction.
That's a great distinction. Rest versus distraction.
Yes. And if you want true balance, you need both kinds of rest, physical and mental. Physical rest means sleep or relaxation. Mental rest means doing something that clears your mind, like reading, walking, or spending time in nature.
That's so true. I sometimes feel more rested after a walk than after a nap.
Exactly. Movement can be more refreshing than stillness, depending on what your body needs. The key is listening to yourself.
So basically, balance starts with self-awareness, knowing what drains you, what recharges you, and what truly matters.
Perfectly said. And here's something I tell all my clients. If everything is important, nothing is important. You have to choose what deserves your focus.
That's another great line. And I think it applies not just to work, but to life in general.
Yes, absolutely. Balance is personal. It looks different for everyone. For one person, it's spending more time with family. For another, it's learning a new skill or simply having quiet mornings. There's no single formula.
I love that it's not about rules, it's about awareness and choice.
Exactly. Awareness and choice. Those are the two pillars of balance.
Beautifully said. Clara, before we finish, what's one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's feeling burned out or lost right now?
I'd say pause. Just stop. Take one day to breathe, to rest, to reflect. You don't have to have all the answers today. Start small. Drink more water, get some sunlight, talk to someone you trust. Small steps lead to big change.
That's wonderful advice. Sometimes we forget that slowing down is also progress.
Exactly. Rest is productive too.
I love that. Rest is productive too. I think that's the perfect note to end on.
Yes, it is.
Clara, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing so many practical insights.
Thank you, Anna. It was a real pleasure talking with you, and I hope our listeners will take at least one small step toward a healthier balance after this episode.
I'm sure they will. And to everyone listening, thank you for being with us on Think in English podcast. Remember, every episode is designed to help you learn English naturally through real, meaningful conversations.
Yes, and hopefully to inspire you to live a little better too.
Exactly. Take care, stay balanced, and keep thinking in English.
Bye, everyone!
Kliknij w jeden z polecanych filmów, aby kontynuować naukę. Dziękuję za obejrzenie całego materiału i wspólnie spędzony czas. Jeśli lekcja okazała się przydatna, zostaw subskrypcję, łapkę w górę i napisz swoją opinię w komentarzu. To pomaga rozwijać kanał i tworzyć kolejne treści. Do zobaczenia w kolejnym odcinku.